In the village of Kumaya, where the sun baked the red soil and people lived off what little the land could offer, Nia walked barefoot through the dust every day. She did not have a proper uniform. Her bag was a torn piece of cloth with a few herbs, old bandages, and a single bottle of antiseptic. Yet when people fell sick, they didn't call the wealthy merchant with gold rings. They called Nia. Not because she had more, but because she gave more. The rich measured worth in coins. Nia measured it in cash. When the unconscious man was brought in, no one asked who he was. They only whispered that healing him would be a waste. She simply knelt beside his broken body, wiped his face with a damp cloth, and whispered gently, "Are safe now." That single moment, soft, sincere, and unpaid, was worth more than any treatment given in gold-covered hospitals. Her service wasn't born from salary. It was born from soul. Every morning, Nia arrived early. Though her own stomach ached with hunger, she would soak the cloth in cool water and rest it on the stranger's forehead. When her small supply of herbs ran out, she borrowed leaves from nature's garden and brewed teas that carried warmth into his chest. Her fingers were tired. Her back ached. But still, she smiled. In her heart, helping someone in pain was not a favor. It was her calling. She didn't need reward, she needed peace. People began to mock her. "He's not from here," they said. "Why do you care?" Even elders shook their heads. But Nia knew something they did not. When someone is weak, the question isn't who they are, but what we can be for them. She chose to be a healer, not a judge. Her care was pure, untouched by greed or pride. And though her home was small, her heart made room for the world. Her service, though unnoticed by many, was shaping something powerful, both in her and in the silent man who lay motionless. True service cannot be bought. It is the medicine that flows from compassion. Nia never held certificates, diplomas, or plaques, but her hands, calloused and tender, knew how to hold the dying and cradle the weak. Her worth was not printed on paper or sealed in envelopes. It lived in the healing of wounds, the quiet wiping of sweat, and the unwavering presence of someone who showed up every day, rich in heart though poor in pocket. Long after the village clinic closed its doors and the laughter of children faded into the hum of night insects, Nia remained seated beside the still stranger. While others returned to their families, rested on woven mats, or gathered around fires, Nia sat in silence, her oil lamp flickering, her eyes heavy with sleep, but her heart wide open. She did not need to stay, yet she stayed. Her kindness had no clock, no curfew, and no requirement of witness. Each night she spoke softly to the man who could not speak back. She told him stories of her childhood, of how she used to chase fireflies with her brothers, of how her mother once fell sick and taught her the value of gentle hands. She whispered dreams of building a better clinic, one where even strangers would be welcomed. The man did not stir, did not blink, did not even sigh, but Nia believed he could hear her in ways that eyes and ears cannot prove. And so her voice became the rhythm of hope in a room otherwise filled with silence. The villagers thought her strange. They saw no sense in staying up with a body that did not move. "He's gone," they said. "He's a shadow." But Nia did not believe in shadows as endings. She believed in the warmth that can return after the longest night. So while the world outside surrendered to sleep, her kindness became the heartbeat of that quiet room, echoing between cracked mud walls and into the soul of the man who lay still but not absent. There is something sacred about the kind who stay after all others have left. Nia's nights were not heroic. They were humble. She brushed away flies. She covered the man's feet when the winds turned cold. She prayed over his breathing and hummed lullabies that her mother once sang to her during the days of famine. Her care wasn't loud or grand, but it was relentless. In the deep of night, where hope is tested and patience stretched, she remained, a gentle light in someone else's darkness. In every moment when the world chose to forget, Nia chose to remember that the soul feels even when the body fails. Her kindness wasn't for applause. It wasn't even for outcome. It was simply the offering of love in its purest form, unasked, unseen, and unwavering. And somewhere in the stillness of that deep sleep, the man felt it, not in the ears, but in the spirit. For when the world sleeps, it is the kindness that stays awake which quietly rebuilds broken people. In the dry lands of Kumaya, the people knew that the tallest baobab tree began with a seed no bigger than a grain of rice. Nia understood this truth not just in the fields, but in the ways of the heart. Every little thing she did for the silent man, though it looked small to others, was a seed she was planting. A wet cloth on his forehead, a spoonful of millet porridge, a softly sung song before dawn. These were not grand gestures, yet like rain on dry soil, they were quiet miracles. The villagers laughed behind their hands. "Does he even know what you do?" they teased. He cannot speak, cannot blink, cannot give thanks, but Nia never waited for applause. She believed that love was like the early morning dew. It must fall even when no one notices. She didn't need the man to respond. She needed only the chance to give. Each act, no matter how small, was a prayer, a thread, a whisper of belief that life could return if nurtured enough. She swept the dust from his bed each day as if preparing it for a king. She braided his hair so it wouldn't tangle, talking to him about the seasons, the winds, and how the moon seemed fuller that week. Though he lay still, her hands moved like a mother's, steady, gentle, and full of purpose. Each motion was a small act. Each act, a root reaching deep into the soul of a stranger she had never known but had chosen to care for. The world often waits for fireworks, for large movements and grand victories. But Nia's love worked like nature itself, slow, consistent, invisible to the untrained eye. And like nature, it grew in silence. The man's chest began to rise a little deeper with each breath. His fingers would twitch in response to her touch. The change was not fast, but it was real. Because what is done with love, no matter how small, takes root in places we cannot always see. In the end, it was those small, daily, unnoticed acts that brought the miracle forth. No loud ceremony, no medicine of gold, just the steady rhythm of a woman's care. A seed watered by faith and shielded by patience. Nia had no riches, no name of status, but she possessed something far greater. The wisdom to understand that the smallest acts, when done with love, grow into the deepest healing. In every village, there are those who see only with their eyes, and then there are those who see with the heart. Nia belonged to the second kind. When others looked at the man lying silent on the mat, they saw a burden, a stranger, a mystery best left untouched. But Nia saw something different. She did not see the dirt on his clothes or the silence of his lips. She saw pain in need of comfort and life refusing to give up. She saw the soul that others missed. Many asked her, "Why do you care for a man who cannot speak your name?" They didn't understand. To them, value was measured by familiarity, by status, by usefulness. But Nia had no such scale. When she told stories of her childhood or whispered prayers over his chest, his eyelids never fluttered. But something deep within her told her he remembers. Perhaps not with his mind, but with something older, something older, something rooted in spirit. There is a silence in suffering that words cannot touch. The man's silence was not just physical. It was the silence of being forgotten, unseen, cast into a place between life and death. And yet Nia kept speaking to him, not for answers, not for acknowledgement, but because she believed that no soul, no matter how still, should ever feel alone. In her presence, the man had more than a nurse. He had a witness to his existence. Some days she would sit beside him in complete stillness. No words, no songs, just breath and presence. She believed that healing did not always come from herbs or prayers, but from simply being there. There was power in silence, and in that silence the soul often listens best. The villagers could not see it, but Nia did. How sometimes his fingers curled slightly when she sang, or how his breath grew steadier when she whispered in the night. It is said in the old stories that when a soul wanders between worlds, it follows the warmth of memory to find its way back. Nia became that memory for him. Her voice, her touch, her daily care, each moment stitched into the man's spirit like thread through cloth. He might not have shown it, but his heart was listening deeply and completely, and though his lips were closed, his spirit began to awaken with every quiet act of love she gave. So when the day finally came, when his eyes opened and tears spilled without a word, it was not surprise that filled them, but recognition. He remembered, not her name, not her face, but her care, her presence, the sound of a voice that stayed when the world walked away. That is the power of love poured into silence. It does not vanish. It settles into the soul and waits patiently until the soul is ready to rise again. When the man finally opened his eyes, it was not with confusion or panic, but with stillness, as if his spirit had returned from a long journey. His gaze moved slowly, searching until it found her, the same woman who had sat by his side, who had cried when no one watched, who had fed him her last spoon of porridge. Nia. He didn't ask where he was. He didn't ask where he was. He didn't speak of the accident. He simply reached for her trembling hands and pulled her into an embrace that said everything his lips could not. There were no riches offered, no titles spoken, no mention of reward, just arms that held her tightly, as though trying to catch up for all the days he could not. For all the days he could not. That hug wasn't about thanks. It was about recognition. The man hadn't forgotten the warmth of her voice or the rhythm of her care. His gratitude wasn't wrapped in gold or coins. It was wrapped in the depth of touch, in the weight of shared silence. In that one moment, he returned everything she had given without a single word. The villagers gathered outside the hut, whispering in awe, unsure of what to say. They had all written him off. They had mocked her devotion. But now the man was awake, alive, and holding her like a lifeline. It was not because of doctors or miracles from beyond. It was because of a woman who loved without need and served without reason. She hadn't cared who he was before. She only cared that he was human. She just closed her eyes and breathed. She didn't need him to say a thank you. She didn't need him to promise her anything. His embrace had already repaid every ounce of love she had poured out. Because true gratitude is not measured in gifts. It is felt in closeness, in stillness, in the silent way two hearts recognize each other. In that small room, the greatest kind of wealth was exchanged, not through hands, but through presence. One who had once been broken was now whole. And the one who had stayed beside him was the reason he came back. The man chose not to return to the world he had left behind. Though his past was a mystery, the present was clear. He built a life in Coma, not in grandeur, but in gratitude. Together, he and Nia turned the little clinic into a place of warmth where no one was ever too poor, too broken, or too unknown to be healed. He never told the villagers who he truly was or where he came from. He didn't need to. The only truth that mattered had already been lived, that when love is given freely without expectation, it changes not just the one who receives it, but the one who gives it. And so the people of Coma remembered not just the story of the man who woke up, but the nurse who never gave up. Her name was whispered for generations, not because she saved a rich man, but because she loved like a queen, served like a mother, and stayed like a friend. In the heart of Africa, that story lives on. A kindness may sleep, but it never dies.